It was 8%.
My whole bed is in the small, like aisle. Oh, next year. I'm gonna.
We were driving, we all actually.
No.
Sure. Somebody in town has got a Matt Black thing. Oh, I've seen him. I don't know, Bruce. They must live in Chadwick somewhere. And it's like, oh, I'm not there. I was driving the truck.
I don't want to.
There's a light there too. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Let me get the team.
That's one of the things I like.
I'll text you.
You see all these cars.
I will.
Yeah. Okay, I'll be up there. I think it starts, yeah.
I'd like to bring the meeting to order and ask that roll be called.
Bergeron,
Here.
Feldman,
Here.
Hall,
Here.
Holzhauser,
Here.
Tyra,
Here.
Wagenbach,
Here.
yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. You know, I was hearing an echo. There's an echo coming out of this computer.
Out of the computer?
Yeah.
I did it too. Yep, I can you hear that. Haven't adjusted. It's working.
All right, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board will now move on to the public participation portion of the meeting. Dr. Dearman will begin with the superintendent's report. Dr. Dearman.
We're on. Okay. First item I have, FOIA requests. There have been 3 FOIA requests since our last meeting. All the requests have been filled by Mr. McKenzie. We don't have any recognitions tonight. Normally we try and highlight something that's going on or someone in the district. We were going to recognize the state champion for shot put, or for distance. He had second shot. But he is out of town right now, and then next month his coach is out of town, so we're gonna, and he's a junior, so it'll be, so we'll get him in August, so no recognitions tonight. Dr. Adrian, can you give us a quick update on construction?
Going on. I shared a report with you this morning. Field house is coming along well. Got the roof up, gutters and bridge cap going on. Drywall complete. The good thing about it, I think that's done a really nice job keeping things going while they've been waiting on the roof. The flooring is supposed to be here the week of 4th of July. That'll take a lot of time. But also taking a lot of time playing the sports equipment. When I say that, I'm talking about the basketball hoops and the curtain are taking a lot of time. But the whole time that roof is off, the painter was in there painting and moving ahead. So the concrete work is done, the site work is 95% done, so really happy with that. That's going to be done in August. We don't know when in August, but it's going to be done in August. Wild Way project, you know, I shared the picture with that thing is going amazingly well. PJ Harris did a tremendous job with that. Lots of guys on the site, lots of equipment on the site, lots of different phases of the work being done. We did run into some problems with the soil, was not at a compaction rate that's high enough to support things, so we did have to spend some contingency money to get the footings and everything in place for that. If you're over there the next couple of days, take a look at the runoff. We do have a serious problem with runoff from the neighborhood to the south. We've done a lot of tile work. We've got a lot of oversized tile in there. And today, one of our 18-inch tiles couldn't keep up with the flow. I understand today was a lot of water, but the water coming from that subdivision, that detention pond wasn't detaining much of anything. So we've got to call up the city to help us navigate that. That is an issue. As you know, we're dealing with it right now at Valley. If you're below grade, you're going to have water problems all the time. And that takes to the blacktopping down there, the asphalt in Valley, it's not getting done right now. They've stripped it all off and built it, but they can't put the new asphalt down because there's so much water coming off that hill seeping into it. So that might be a little longer than we had hoped. Road improvements, I want you to also throw this in your mind while you're here. Pacific and Atlantic and 3rd Street, the access road to Wild Way, they're going to take some pretty serious refurbishing. And we're probably going to have to enter an intergovernmental agreement with the Radnor Township to get that work done so that our families and buses can get to that school safely. that would look like, probably, we would spend the money up front, and Radnor would pay us back over time, because they're, in theory, they're roads. But we're gonna have to be responsible for some of those improvements. So we've got some work, and we've met with them several times, it's going well, but just wanted you to be aware to keep an eye out in the future for an intergovernmental agreement for that. Summer projects are about to really kick off. We've got some things done, but they're about to really kick off this week. The way that works, most of those contractors know we pay our bills in July. So they want to do the work so they can invoice us in July and get paid as profit. So they kind of hold off a little bit. The solar project, we got to high school, we've been in it for 10 months. We've already realized the savings of $28,000, give or take. So that's going really well for us. That takes us to another opportunity at Waller Way for solar. But I've got a plan with working with some vendors and our engineers, but I want to fine tune it before I bring it to you, because there's been some rebates that have been repealed in the recent past, and the batteries were explored also, but the batteries are extremely expensive, and we can only kick back a certain portion to the grid, a smaller portion. But we still have a really good package in mind. We still get some kickbacks back. So I'll bring it to you, and I think that it's going to be a good plan. I think you'll like it and save us some money. Cell tower update. We had some more conversations this week with that. Right now, it's just a language issue we're working through. I'm sure we'll have something in the next couple weeks of that. Hopefully in July, we'll bring you back to final agreement on that. And one thing that I'm obligated to share with you about, we had a trophy disposal process take place in April. It was trophies from Valley and Dunlap Middle School that were outdated and no one restored them. We went through the board process of posting it, sharing it with the Alumni Association. We had a week-long pickup at the DAC for all those of April 20th and 24th. No one came and picked up one of the trophies. We have around 100 of them up there, so I had to give you notice, and then 1 week later, we do dispose of those trophies. All right? So that's where that's at. I just talked to Katie briefly about it. I think the high school is going to go the same process. I will not be managing that project, though. That will be for Katie and Mr. Holmes to manage. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Dr. Abrams. This Friday, June 19th, all buildings, including the district office, will be closed for the school code. And then ISB has posted the superintendent position on the website. It's now accepting applications. The application deadline is September 21st. And just a quick update on the storms. We didn't suffer any real severe damage with the storms that came through. We lost a couple trees, primarily TTS got hit the hardest. Thank you to Dr. Adrian and his crew and Carmody for getting that cleaned up relatively quickly. Today, I canceled summer school because of the impending storms. Summer school gets out about 11. That was supposed to be like prime time, and I just couldn't take a chance of having kids out on those buses with 100-mile-an-hour potential winds and hail and whatever else. Obviously, it didn't come to fruition, and I'm glad of that. But that was the logic behind canceling it. And it's summer school, so the high school people do remote work, and then the others will take care of that when the time comes. But it doesn't impact a large number of students, like complete closure. And that completes my report, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dearman. This time, we'll move on to public comments. I don't see anyone from the public here, so if anyone would like to address the board, raise their hand. Okay, guess that. This concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to the information discussion items. School activity accounts. Reports are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Board policy revisions for press update 121 have been included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding the 2026-2027 transportation contracts have been included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Okay, next, Dr. Andrews. Ms. Sutton will present information on the math pilot program.
so the reason that Anna and I are here to talk to you tonight is to inform the Board of Education about the math program evaluation that we are currently conducting with the district, what that looks like for the next this past school year and the upcoming school year. Provide a brief overview of historical math performance in the district, and then just make sure that you understand what our next steps will be looking like here in the curriculum program. Before we go into painting a picture of what a program evaluation in Dunlap looks like just overall, a program evaluation is a best practice of the school district to evaluate a couple of things. Either it could be an initiative or a focus portion within a content area of programming, such as math. And it will either help to affirm and confirm things that you're doing in the district, as well as highlight some areas for potential growth, and help point you in the right direction for what you can do to course correct. And then there are two types of program evaluations. There is a formative, which is something that's shorter in nature, and it's also done to, again, to inform for something specific within that. Or summative, which would be like at the end of like an initiative. So if you had like a coordinated effort that you were going to implement certain instructional practices in the classroom, like that could be one summative means, or it could be after an extended period of time examining the curricular programming within the school.
Okay, so our math program evaluation, as Matt said, began the end of the school year 24-25, and it consists of 3 phases. So throughout this presentation, we are going to give an overview of what each phase has entailed, and then provide updates on the work that is completed within each phase. So phase 1 contained a lot. It was the heaviest of the 3. In this phase, we worked on beginning building background knowledge on this topic. We evaluated stakeholder feedback that came through on the survey that helped develop our curriculum department 3-year plan, and the school year 25-26 PD needs survey, as well as we were following very closely ISB's development of the comprehensive numeracy plan, which Matt will talk a little bit more about here. And then another step of phase 1 was we assembled the math learning community, and this is a cohort of teachers that volunteered to attend day-long trainings at Bloomington's Regional Office of Education with a math expert there that started last July and culminated this past May. We conducted a literature review with the guiding questions: what characteristics of evidence-informed math instruction ensure outcomes for all students, and how should professional development be designed to increase an educator proficiency in effective math teaching practices. On a dedicated workday back in April, the math learning community evaluated our current landscape of mathematics instruction by conducting a needs assessment in which they looked at student data as well as teacher evaluation feedback. And then from there, the needs assessment led to the identification of district priorities, which helped us to create our vision for math programming moving forward and guided our next steps.
All right. So the ISB comprehensive numeracy plan, so like the literacy plan that ISB had released, we're a little ahead of the ball there, which is great, but what that does is it serves to provide the districts a common understanding of what numeracy is, so ensuring that students are able to take the skills that they've learned within math and they're able to execute them across different domains, content areas, and of course within real life, and to provide resources to help districts identify, perform program evaluations, evaluate what they're doing with the districts, and then select resources to meet their programming needs. So it helps to serve that. Just again, we were able to stay ahead for a couple of reasons. One, Leslie B., one of our curriculum coordinators, was on the committee that helped draft that plan. So it was a great resource to have in the house, as well as just knowing that best practices are what we're informing that for. So we kept in line with that.
The educators listed here made up our math learning community, and we just wanted to take a moment to thank them, draw attention to them, because they have been completely instrumental in this process. Like we said, they were the first ones to volunteer to go to these trainings. They're day long. They were out of their classroom once a month all year long, but at which they learned and focused on the effective math teaching practices for instruction, assessment, and aligned with the rigor of the standards at their grade level. But throughout these trainings, they have been highly reflective and introspective, and they've shared with us their feedback and their expertise in what they're learning, and it's really helped guide this process. And the members of the math cohort have also helped complete a lot of the steps in these phases that we were going through as well. Okay. Another major task of phase 1 was conducting the needs assessment and determining the priorities. This really kind of set the footwork for going forward. So for the needs assessment, the math learning community came together And they evaluated several student data sources listed there, as well as the results of a curriculum evaluation survey that was taken by all the teachers of math in Dunlap. From these data sources, though, then they identified areas of strength and areas of need. So from those identified strengths and needs, the group then determined priorities for the future of Dunlap's math program. Some of those priorities described what math teaching and learning should look like in Dunlap, and that's the summary of these are in that top box there, but in summary, to be truly competent in mathematics, students need to meet the rigor called for by the standards, and this is represented by being proficient in conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, as well as application or real-world application of transfer of skills in math. From the needs assessment, though, the math learning community prioritized the conceptual understanding, building students' conceptual understanding, and this would include a renewed focus on having manipulatives available at all levels so that students can develop that conceptual understanding as they move from concrete understanding to representational before moving on to an abstract understanding.
I'm sorry, you said manipulatives?
Yes. So
What is that?
items in mathematics that you could use to represent the numbers that you were working with. So your fingers are manipulatives, or counting blocks, or anything that is a visual representation of the math that's happening. Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
The needs assessment, specifically the teacher evaluation survey, really called for consistent and aligned curriculum and instructional practices that are supportive of their grade level standards so that there's coherence within and across the grades. Alongside those content standards, there are standards for mathematical practice, which are a unifying thread throughout all the grades. At kindergarten and at 12th grade, they're the same standards for mathematical practice, but what they do is they really just describe what student behaviors in math should look like. And our needs assessment recognized a need for increased opportunities for students to focus on mathematical reasoning and discourse, or talking with their peers about the math that they're doing and defending the math that they're doing, as well as opportunities for real-world application to build critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Okay, and lastly, a priority was placed on high-quality professional development opportunities for teachers to really build effective math teaching practices to support diverse populations while meeting grade level content, as well as scaffolding and differentiation for those special populations of learners that they work with.
All right, next we're going to take a look at some historical performance. So this first graph, here we're going to take a look at our state mandated assessment for math. So at the elementary and middle school level, that's the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. We'll take a look at 3rd through 5th grade students to start. So this graph is taking a look at performance from 2018 to 2026. We did not have scores for school years 2020 and 2021 for obvious reasons there. And when you take a look at in the darker blue color there, sorry, there's a lot of lines here. But the darker blue is going to be your average proficiency for those grade levels, so students meeting proficiency benchmarks. And for 2018 through 2024, you have average performance falling between the 50 and to 60% of students within that time frame. Then that jumps up for school year 2025 and 2026. If you remember from the presentation I gave in November, ISB had recalibrated their proficiency levels and had decreased what those proficiency composite level benchmarks were. The largest change occurring in 3rd grade, which then results in a higher percentage of students meeting proficiency targets here in the 3rd through 5th grade band. So that average affects that, because you'll see a little bit of a variance there when compared to 6th through 8th. But it is just a large number to point out there. In red, you'll see growth averages, again, starting back from 2018 through 2025. I'm able to show the proficiency scores, the preliminary proficiency scores from the school year that just ended. Growth scores aren't out yet. Those won't be out until this fall when I get that presentation in November. But again, there you're seeing those growth scores occurring between the 50th and 60th percentile there, and that just means that on average for school year 2025, 61.7% of students grew at the same rate or more than their academic peers. And at the elementary level, that's comparing their growth from 3rd to 4th grade, 4th to 5th grade. So just 2 years, it'll be different when we take a look at the next 3 on 6th through 8th. There you see that everything's a little bit closer together. Again, in the solid blue, For the darker blue is your proficiency for students in 6th through 8th grade, their performance on the assessment. So scores fall between 50, the 50th percentile up to the 65th, most recently with school year 2026, with average growth staying at about between 55 to 60%. So 55 to 60% of students growing at the same rate or higher than their peers from the previous school year. So proficiency, again, is that those students who are meeting proficiency targets. Growth takes into account all students, regardless of where they were, so not just those who met grade level expectations. So we're showing how much we're growing students across the district. So areas, and definitely things to celebrate, because it's well above state averages, as I report each November, but definitely room to grow. High school proficiency is a little bit different to look at. So back in 2018, we had shifted to the SAT after historically giving the ACT as our state mandated assessment dating back to No Child Left Behind, so days when I was in high school, and the work keys assessment that was also given. And then we had shifted in school year 2025 back to the ACT. And so you see that big jump there. And it's for a couple of reasons. Not only due to the change, but previously I've reported about how proficiency levels as reported from the SAT were contrary to what the College Board, the makers of the SAT, had defined as college level readiness or career level readiness. ISB had created their own proficiency benchmarks contrary to that, to be in line with their reporting system that they had on file with the Department of Education. When they switched after evaluating how we perform compared to other states, they went with, in this case now, the ACT's recommendations for average performance. So students being, in this case, capable of earning a C on average, a C or higher in a college level mathematics course. And that composite score benchmark is before you're looking at mid-20s to be like in the exceeding range. So it definitely changes those proficiency levels. Lots of bar graphs in this next slide. Yes.
I'm sorry, Doctor. So back on that. So really, this isn't. I mean, so you're not. This is not a measure of the same.
It's proficiency, but from two different assessments. Correct. So two different assessments that are reporting out on students meeting proficiency levels. In this case, at 11th grade at the high school, but two different assessments.
And you don't look at growth at the high school?
We do, that just started. We will have that in the fall, and I'll report that up. Yeah. But because this past 25 was the first year we gave the ACT, you could, I suppose, calculate that, or they could, ISB could calculate that through concordance statements, but it's not perfect. So they have it. Good question. But I will have that in November. It'll be the first time. This next, again, chart is something that historically that I've reported out on starting back in 2020, but this was done for a different reason back then, but we've continued to talk about this when we're looking at what some may refer to as summer slides. So after studying the skills and concepts at a grade level for an entire school year, perhaps we aren't continuing to exercise those same skills during the summer, so they might atrophy a bit. So it's seeing if we're seeing some recoupment from our August administration of the STAR math, our local assessment that we give 3 times a year. Are we seeing that recoupment? And the last two would be this past school year, fall and winter. The largest group would be those students who are at or above the benchmark. So 81.6 in the fall and 85.1% of students meeting the meeting scores within the 50th percentile or above. The next would be students who are in our on-watch category, so they're between the 26th and 49th percentile. And the orange are the students in intervention, it goes down, would be from the 11th through 24th, and then that smallest bit is students performing in the 1st through 9th percentile. So from fall 25 to winter of 26, we definitely see some recoupment of those who are meeting at or above benchmarks. And we are seeing a decrease in the number of students who are in that lowest group, so performing below the 10th percentile. We do see an increase there in intervention, obviously attributed to some of those students moving up. What I don't show, for just consistency's sake, is the spring performance on this, which is definitely the highest that it's been in terms of that for the past several years for how we grant invites to our K-8 summer schools based on the number of students who are in Tier 2 or Tier 3 interventions for math or ELA. and this was the lowest number of students that we had to qualify for that because they had tested out of needing intervention. So that was a great effort, of course, by our teachers, our interventionists, and also from Amelia Miller, our Assistant Director of Student Services, who's been coordinating our MTSS efforts in our revampment of that the past several years. So seeing the fruits of that labor. Final star performance we'll take a look at here is our student growth percentile. So again, it's the average number of students who are growing at the same rate or more than their academic peers. We're hovering within what Renaissance, the makers of star assessments, call the typical range. Again, you could always do better, but that is very strong to see, and it's something that Renaissance continues to work with me on, and giving different presentations and looking at our performance and things we're doing within the district. And so through that, again, we're falling within that typical range, which is anywhere between the 35th to 65th percentile. Anything above the 66 and above is above average growth. So seeing some strong typical growth there within our mathematics programming. However, in terms of growth, we do see the trend line decreasing a bit as it goes up and down each year. This next slide might later on, but if you're like, what did Matt talk about later on, go back to this slide. It summarizes everything I just said.
As the final task in phase 1, a vision for Dunlap math programming was developed, and it encompassed all the priorities determined by that district needs assessment, the research that we conducted on highly effective math curriculum, as well as ISB's guidance around their comprehensive numeracy plan.
All right, so during phase 2, our deepen and extended learning and refinement phase of the program evaluation, we researched highly rated math curriculum. We'll talk a little bit more about here in a bit. Evaluated and refined our priority standards and success criteria. So within any content area, whether it's math, ELA, art, you have more learning standards than technically you have seat time available within this district. So it's 100% the approach that districts take to identifying either priority standards or star standards, they call it something. But it's through a coordinated effort of your content area experts that have discussions about what standards students need to have a focused amount of time on, ensure to be able to master those skills, to be successful at the next level, to use across different content areas, and then of course take with them for life above and beyond their time with us here and their K-12 experience. So those are the priorities. We took a look at our assessments, our assessment results, do our priority standards meet what we're seeing in terms of areas where we need to grow, and then the success criteria is like the unpacking of those standards. So what does it mean in order for a student to show mastery of that standard that they have to do? That's the success criteria. So we take a look at that and then propose revisions to that to again strengthen our programming there. Of course, in terms of how we practice and think about math within the district, continue to broaden our individual and collective mindset about math and how that looks within the classroom. And then looking at our field testing of curricular resources, which
a step in phase 2 focused on, like Matt said, broadening professional development for teachers. Our first round of teachers that had the opportunity to go to that learning cohort at the Bloomington Regional Office of Education was able to share what they had learned and the instructional practices that they have refined as a result of their learning and how it impacted their students in their classroom with their peers. And that really sparked a very big interest in a second round of teachers attending. So we have a second, much larger group of teachers that will be attending those trainings this year. And they're very excited to piggyback off of the momentum that this first cohort had started for everybody. But along with this second cohort of focused learning, all teachers of math in Dunlap will have opportunities during district school improvement days and institute days to receive professional development on the 3 topics listed there. Those 3 areas of effective math teaching were identified by the math learning community as well as our curriculum councils as the highest points of need that would support all learners in the class. So that will be the focus of math throughout this year.
All right, so when it comes to taking a look at potential curricular resources that we would propose for adoption, at the points, there were some criteria that we took a look at before even presenting them and bringing forward for teachers to take a look at. The first is making sure that it's a current publication, not only to make sure that it's aligned to learning standards, but more specifically, like to call out here, is to make sure that for our needs, for any electronic resources, that it's something that will be sunsetted and we'll have to continue access to over the next several years. As after a while, they will sunset those applications, they're no longer available. They're not necessarily as upfront about that. The newer, the better. And then it also ensures that if we have any renewable resources, so student consumables, if we choose to adopt those are available to us too, because after those go out of print, they're typically more expensive to get. So we want to make sure that we have that for the foreseeable future. Of course, we want to make sure that they're aligned to our state standards, including the math practice standards, which Hannah had talked about already, and want to make sure that they are already highly rated on EdReports. EdReports, them, is a non-profit entity that evaluates curriculum resources, and in particular for math, making sure that they meet expectations for all 3 gateways at 90% or greater. Those gateways include focus and coherence, rigor, mathematical practice, and then usability for teachers and students.
To determine if one of these prospective resources that we are looking at is aligned with our vision and our needs, we are going to have some volunteer teachers from the initial math learning community conduct field tests. So through math learning community vetting, the prospective curricular resources will be narrowed down to the top 2 choices. And then those volunteer members from the math learning community would teach an entire unit from each of those 2 options in the first semester of next school year. If there's multiple teachers from a grade level that volunteered to be a part of this field test, they would teach opposing units and then swap materials for that comparative purpose. But throughout this time, we'll be collecting student data and perspectives, the students that are working with these resources, as well as feedback from those field testing teachers. We have a math resource review tool that we developed that's in line with what best practices in math instruction should look like, as well as our priorities that we've determined through Dunlap. But also, teachers who are not part of this field test process will also have continued opportunities to explore and provide feedback on these resources, even if they're not field tested.
All right, so for phase 3, consensus and planning and preparation, we'll of course evaluate the field test against vision and build consensus, well, with the resource that Hannah had mentioned. We'll of course then bring our recommendations to the Board of Education for review and consideration for adoption. First then from there, share consensus with stakeholders and define expectations what that would look like in terms of teacher, student use, and then how things will be supported. All that would be a way to engage all stakeholders across the district. And of course, we can plan for continued professional development. So the first thing you can do is implement something and not provide the support to make sure that it's successful to continue to evaluate it and provide what support is needed along the way, because that will change as we work with resources, and of course, improve our mathematical understanding.
Matt, I have a question. So obviously you guys are pouring a lot of time and effort into this, right? And that cohort of teachers who are involved. As they are identifying course corrections in the way we do things to make things better, okay, for math instruction, is the fact that this process stretches over a period of years, does that inhibit the ability of curriculum folks like you guys to be able to make changes that are based upon some suggested course corrections before it comes to the board? In other words, it seems like you guys are gathering a lot of very useful data that in 2028 looks for some kind of a decision. But what about 2027? What about 2026? You know what I mean? So I guess I'm interested in hearing, you are out there gathering all this information about these are new ways that we're used, new things out there that are helpful, and you test it and it's helpful. Can you go ahead and run with it, or are you limited to what you can do until we decide that there's some great policy change for the curriculum?
Sure. Would it be more helpful to have something newer sooner? Sure. We're being a little bit more conscientious in this effort because as we're taking a look at the standards more in depth since probably the first couple of times we unpacked this as a district, we're refining heavily in some areas what it means to teach to mastery at a grade level. And so, as we did with literacy, we're just being very careful about how we go through that so that it's done correctly. and teachers understand that if we're telling you that we're stopping at a certain point when we used to go further, I go into too many specifics, they understand why, and then it's implemented correctly. And we have that be appropriate across the district, as well as just making sure that if we're going to spend a lot of money on a resource, we've had the opportunity to vet it correctly.
To kind of piggyback off of that too, a lot of the teachers that have been going to these learning opportunities and are coming back with this renewed information, they're sharing that with their peers and giving opportunities for them to present that. We have several of the teachers that are leading some summer professional development opportunities. We've had 2 happen already this week, last week and this week, where several teachers attended. They're taking the ideas from this, and they're things that they can implement into their classroom, whatever resource we have in front of them. And as well as that, we had one of our high school math teachers that was part of this math learning community. She coordinated a work day with the 8th grade Algebra 1 teachers, where they did a little bit of refinement of the scope and sequence of the skills that are taught from 8th grade Algebra 1 and 2. So they are taking some of what they're learning, putting it into practice now before we have an official rollout of something for everyone.
I have a couple questions. When you started, you said that you got feedback from the survey. It was when you were talking about phase 1. But remind me again, what survey was that, or who did that?
So many surveys.
Yeah,
So,
but the initial one that you talked about, not the
okay.
not the
Phase
one
one,
from the cohorters, but
we
before
had,
that.
every year, Max sends out a professional development needs survey that teachers fill out just so we didn't helping us pinpoint where we need to put our focus of professional development. But also, at the end of last school year, it was the end of our curriculum department 3-year plan. So in developing this year's or this new cycle of a 3-year plan, there's a survey for that as well. So we took information from both of those, and they kind of were both pointing towards.
It's just to the
focus on
teachers
math.
and just to the math teachers.
Right.
And when was the last time you took a big run at math?
2015, 14.
Yeah.
And is that, I mean, is that too long? Is that too short? Is that typical? 12 years? I mean, what?
Again, it depends. We had, instead of a new resource adoption back in 2018, there was a different approach that was taken, and our scope and sequences were reconstituted. And so it was utilizing and repurposing the resources we had to then make how our revamping of our math programming occurred at that time.
I mean, did something from the data, I mean, because the data, you even said on slide 15, because of the recalibration,
Right.
you can't even really go off of some of the old data points. So is this just more intuitive that you decided to tackle math? It wasn't something from the scores that suggested you should tackle math.
So when looking at proficiency scores on average overall, the picture looks good. And it really does when you start to drill down to individual students. But when taking a look at students who are at or near just barely making that threshold, then that starts to paint a different picture. So it's wanting to move the needle on all students regardless of where they fall. So overall, our math programming does look good. Can we make improvements as we learn more about it? Yes. So is hearing more about what we should be doing in terms of what the standards actually say and what's best to make sure that students have and are able to execute the standards for mathematical practice. So really, truly utilize that knowledge and those skills within the real world, as well as have a true conceptual understanding so that when they get into more complex math courses, they actually understand what it is that came before it, so they can do those more difficult skills more easily. That's the hope and goal through that. So not only to move the needle there in terms of those students who just barely hit proficiency, there is a good number of students who can take a look at that breakdown. Part of the data that we did with teachers and different buildings have done throughout the years. But then again, the real world application of that.
Okay. Last question, page 19, slide 19. You had in the second iteration of the cohort, you had 8 teachers sign up for the 3rd grade, but only 1 for the 8th grade. Does that present as an issue or?
It's just a smaller pool of teachers, and we didn't want it to be something that we were forcing anyone to go to because of the tiny commitment. It's being one full day out of your classroom every month. But at each middle school, there's maybe only 2 or 3 eighth-grade teachers.
And in some cases, only one is truly dedicated to it.
Yeah.
Sure, because there's less, yeah, okay, less physical buildings or people, I guess. Okay, by that. Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, great, thank you. Very nice, good work. Okay, we will now move on to the financial presentation from Mr. McKenzie. Are there any questions? Sure, I love to get them that way.
Figure this out.
Mike, is this updated or just a printed copy? This is the
Just a
same.
printed copy for you so that you can follow along with the slides. Make it a little easier to read. Sometimes I put too many numbers on the slides, so we figured it would help you out that way. So,
Yeah.
so that is the presentation we're doing here tonight. So, good evening, everybody. I wanted to start this with just a caveat that the projections seem like it should be easy on June 17th, but how we're going to end on June 30th. But the biggest problem is we get $24 million from the county next week, and they won't release that number until tomorrow. Yesterday, it's due, the settlement will be available tomorrow. So I don't know what that number is going to be. We have gotten, in the 5 years I've been here, we've gotten 65.5%, we've got 69.2%, or not 69, 45.5%, 49%. So the average has been like 47.3 or something. So in this presentation, I'm assuming we're going to receive 47% of our property taxes. The difference between 45.5 and 49 is like $1 million, so it doesn't matter long term because if we don't receive it here this month, we're going to receive it in the fall. So, but it seems like it'd be really easy to do a projection because we only have 2 weeks left, but there's some big numbers we don't know. And then we're actually finishing the last federal grant claims right now too, and some of that money will get put into the law, which is, potentially $200,000. Again, if we don't receive it in June, we're going to receive it in July. So it's long term, it doesn't matter. But anyway, so this is the big sheet I do that shows all the different funds. So it's the different objects, salaries, benefits, property taxes. But everybody's basically concerned about the bottom line. So I made this slide of the bottom line projection, comparing our original budget to the current projection. So about the middle of the thing, we have revenues over expenditures or under expenditures, and these are the operating funds, the education fund, the operation and maintenance fund, the transportation fund, working cash funds. You include working cash funds in those because you can transfer working cash in any of those funds at any time to cover a deficit if you want to. So that's kind of why you include working cash in operating funds. So originally we had budgeted that we were going to overspend our revenue by $363,000. If you look at that bottom right corner, currently projecting we'll overspend like $671 for operating funds. Part of that is we spent more on technology. There's some tuition stuff that we spent more of than I expected. Subs were a little higher than I expected. I mean, there's all kinds of little differences, but it's just those are the what I'm currently expecting, but it could easily swing a few $100,000, which is what drives me a little nuts at July 17th.
I'll know a little bit more next week, so.
But of that, I'm going to ask questions along the
Okay,
way
yep.
here in case so I
Please
don't,
do.
so I can follow. But so you've got, I mean, that is, it's 300,000, but I mean, it's, so of that, the 300,000 variance, you think that you named a couple of bigger buckets there. You said IT.
IT is the biggest one, because we spent more on Chromebooks than I had originally budgeted, because the second group of Chromebooks cost more than I expected in the original budget. And the other big variance is special ed tuition for recent children, and that's the biggest variance that I have in any given account. That was like $300,000, because we have some big cases right now that we've had to put out to other.
You think that amounts to 300,000 more than you would have
Yeah,
thought?
that was 350,000
More than I had originally budgeted.
350. And your swing here though is 310.
Right.
But that would,
Those are the two biggest differences that I can really identify.
and what was the rough number on the IT difference?
Like 150,000.
150.
Spent more than I expected.
So there's $500,000 between those two. All right.
So those are the big differences. O&M is pretty close, transportation is pretty close, work cash is just the property taxes and interest, so it's pretty close. And then these are the non-operating funds, debt service, IMRF, Social Security, capital projects, or life saving. We knew we were going to have a big surplus in capital projects because we issued bonds this year. We're going to spend that out over 2+ years. So next year that will have a big negative number. The same thing with IMRF, Social Security. We didn't levy that at all for 2 years, and so we've had a deficit in that the last 2.5 years because of that. Next year we'll swing back to being hopefully near zero number. And then tort and life safety are pretty close to what I expected. Life safety is a little better than I expected simply because we ended up spending some of the summer projects that I thought were going to get charged to life safety were not approved by the state, so they got charged over. So that's why life safety is a little better than I expected. As far as the tentative, or any questions on the projection before I move on? Okay. Think of more, obviously, ask me whatever you get me into. I say extremely tentative budget right now because, again, there are some big numbers we just don't know. I know a lot of salaries. We know what we're going to pay up all our existing employees. So the big part of salaries are out there. I put in estimates for, benefits, all those kind of things. Those things are probably fairly close. What we don't know right now is evidence-based funding. The state has passed the budget, but the governor hasn't signed it yet. We will get an estimate in August about what we will get from evidence-based funding. Last year, our evidence-based funding increased $1.6 million, 1.65 or something. I don't know exactly what we're up in front of me. So I expect it to be similar this year. So I'm assuming in this that we are going to get an additional $1.6 million of evidence-based funding. Used to be called general state aid, but it's evidence-based funding. It's a very complicated formula on how they calculate that based on your student body, not only enrollment, but types of students, plus, comparing to other districts, and we're a tier 1 school. I don't expect that to change, so I expect to get another 1.6 million. Personal property placement tax, I've just budgeted that we're going to have flat. I have not heard any estimates out there yet about what that's going to be. Again, that's available in mid-August usually. And then in this estimate, I also assume that we're going to have a 3% increase of EAV for property taxes. Our average over the last 10 years has been 2.8%. Obviously, the last 3 years, the average has been 7%. So, I mean, I expect it to increase at some point, whether it be 3% or whether it be a big increase or not. Next year, I don't know, but I'm assuming 3% in this estimate. So again, this is a tentative budget with all the numbers, but this is just the important numbers, with the bottom line, total revenues, total expenditures, and then the bottom line. So because of that, in the operating funds, I expect to have a slight surplus over, revenue over expenses next year. I have $120,000 right there. And, that's my best guess at this point. So, and then on the non-operating funds, again, like I said, we're going to see a big negative in capital projects as we finish the building across the way here, and we're going to spend out big money. So we're going to have a big negative number in capital projects. We're going to have, basically flat the other funds to great extent. So, anyway, so that's my current guess on the budget, that I'd like to have better numbers when I come to you in August with the real sensitive budget. We have to have funding and other numbers firmed up. And hopefully we get better numbers of how insurance is going to increase and things like that by the time we do the budget.
And you're bringing this to us early this year.
Early. I usually don't give this presentation this early for this exact reason. I try to do, I analyze all this stuff 16 different ways and try to come up with as exact numbers as I can, but it's just early right now.
Right, but I asked you to do that, so based on feedback from others at the table here, so I think it's important that we get out in front of it. I'm just trying to eyeball, you don't have your pages numbered here, Mike, we'll work on that, but if you look at your projection, the detail from your projection, right, against the detail sheet,
right,
for the tentative budget, and I'm looking at the ed fund specifically. So the bottom of your projection sheet, you've got the 1.7 that you already talked about. Thought it was going to be 1.5 or whatever, and now it's 1.7. Against just a $500,000, I don't want to say just, but it's a $500,000. It's a big change.
Right.
That's the biggest change probably in any of the funds. So I'm just trying to eyeball this a little bit. It comes from, you've got $1.2 million better in property taxes, but you also have a lot more in that. You said last year we got about 1.6 or something, or in evidence-based funding, and you thought we might get that again. Is that what I heard you say?
Right.
But the budget for next year against the projection of last year, unless I'm not doing it right, it looks like a much bigger in.
Can you read my own numbers on this? Did it bring the,
Maybe that isn't a bigger. No, it's yeah, but
So
that's
evidence-based funding was $7.8 million this year. And next year,
9.4.
6 million.
That's
so
over.
you're saying more. You're
Over
saying we're going to
20%
get $1.6 million more this year.
Right. Just like we did last year. If you looked at, if I don't have it on here, but in the previous year, when I first came here, I've been here 5 years. Next week or week after next will be 5 years.
Happy anniversary.
And arguably, time flies when you're having fun.
Something like that.
But when I first came here, we were in about $3.5 million But because of the way our enrollment keeps growing and numbers keep changing in the state, we moved from a tier 2 school to a tier 1 school. So most of the new evidence-based funding gets allocated to tier 1 schools. And so we have continued, we got 1.6 million extra last year. So if you were to look at 25's final numbers, we got, closer to like 6.2 million. And now we got 7.8, we're expecting 9.4 next year. Now, that's just what I'm expecting, so
But Mike, doesn't that come down to the fact that the government did support the evidence-based funding model and put the 350 million additional into it above and beyond what was in it last year?
Right. And
now, with the caveat that we're getting that on the front door, but out the back door goes MCAT, mandated categoricals, special ed private facilities, special ed transportation are all getting reduced.
yeah, we're getting more in evidence-based funding, but we are getting less in things like transportation and some of the special ed things that we are getting less in. But because of the fact we're growing and we have, we're tier 1 school, we're getting more. Whereas other districts around here are actually getting less money next year because they are losing money in categorical and not really getting any evidence-based funding. So it has definitely helped us a lot in the last couple of years, maintained as we've grown, as some of these other school districts have shrunk.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm reading this. I mean, I know I pushed you to come early with as much detail as possible, and I'm being a little critical of it, but it's my prerogative, I guess, here. But the ed fund, to be clear, you've got it improving, all told, with the evidence-based funding. You've got it improving by something greater than $1 million, and you've got in total, as a projection, in June, our total net bottom line going from 700,000 negative to just over 100,000 to the good.
That's correct.
All right, I'll let other people ask questions or talk about it.
My question for you, and I think I had sent these in, I didn't get the response, but with the evidence-based funding, it's going up 1.6 million, 20%. How long will that continue? What will we see the next year? I would not anticipate a 20% increase every year.
Well, I mean, that's what everyone wishes they do. I mean, when I did the 5-year projection I gave you earlier in the spring, I used 1.6 million for the current year because everything was pointing towards that, and I used 500,000 going forward after that. Again, assuming we're going to stay in a tier 1 school and assuming the state doesn't continue to budget that. Luckily for us, Pritzker that's been his big thing, funding schools. And that's the thing we've had on, politically, is funding schools. And so, like him or not, it doesn't matter, it's helped us because of this. And I don't see that changing as long as he remains the governor, but, who knows. But no, I would not even start to predict that it's going to be $1.6 million every year for the rest of it.
I'm just like, yeah, it's over 20%. I mean, that's quite an increase for a revenue.
Yeah, Now, part of the reason it's 20% is historically, Dunlap got very low general state aid. And then when they switched to this new formula, 10 years ago now, it's been quite a while. At first, Dunlap was a tier 2 school, so we weren't benefiting as much. Districts like Morton are a tier 3 school, they don't really see much difference at all year over year. But because we started at such a low number by the formula, we're only about 68% funded based on what we should be funded based on the formula. Most of the money goes to districts that are like that. And because we've grown so quickly, and had to, expand and everything so quickly. That is, the evidence-based funding has really saved us the last couple of years.
And the reason, like you said, is because we're expanding. So if we would level off, you would expect that to stay the same?
Oh, yeah, the way the formula works, you can't go down unless the total funding goes down. So if they just kept it at zero, we'd get the same formula, we'd get the same amount the next
So if
year.
we don't see such a large increase, you would expect
Yeah,
that
and
number
if
to
they were to take the increase off, now if they start taking, funding it less, then it would obviously change, but, the way the formula works, you're kind of locked in at that number unless there's less stimulus they made the next year.
Understood.
So-
Okay, I'm sure it's a pretty complex formula. One other question for you, and maybe you answered this before, but from a capital outlay perspective, that went down significantly year over year, probably about 50%. Is that due to technology, or what would that
That
be?
was mostly technology, because in the current year budget, we bought Chromebooks last year in like May, same kind of thing. We did it in May, but we didn't get those Chromebooks until, like August or something. So we paid for that set of Chromebooks, and now we're paying for this new set of Chromebooks, all in the same year, which we knew we were gonna do. It was budgeted to do that, we just spent $150,000 more than I originally expected, so. on my Chromebook.
So would you say the biggest risk here, if we look at these numbers, would be in that evidence, the EDF? Do you think that would be the biggest unknown at this time?
Oh, sure, yeah, definitely is.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. And that comes in August, did you say?
Yeah, so, I don't know exactly, they haven't released even when they're gonna release that number, but usually it comes out.
Okay.
Around the beginning of August, and then, personal property replacement tax always comes out right around August 15th, so. But like I said, right now, the governor hasn't signed the state budget yet, so we're, I assume he's working on all this, but, they haven't released anything yet, so. And I haven't heard anything through rumors or anything about dates yet, so. I hear from the school business people, Scott hears from the superintendent, group people, so we get a lot of, rumors and stuff going around, but I haven't heard a rumor yet about when that's gonna be released.
Just wait until we hear. All right, thank you, Mike.
Other questions for Mr. McKenzie? Okay,
All right, as always, if you think of anything else, just let me know. Send me an email. I know a few of you did, so I appreciate that.
Thanks.
My old man eyes are struggling with these cables today, so.
I can help you with that, Mike.
uh,
I know that.
that's
I'll
fine.
call Jeff here in a second. Or just Brandon will take care of it.
Okay, information regarding permanent transfer of funds has been included in the board package. Are there any questions? Information regarding the out-of-state overnight culinary trip opportunity has been included in the board packet. Are there any questions? This concludes the information discussion item segment of the meeting. The board will now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussions regarding items on the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nick. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Bergeron,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Holzhauser,
Hi.
Tyra,
Aye.
Yan.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. The board will now move on to action items. The bill list, treasurer's report, district investment report, bank statements are included in the board packet. Could I have a motion to approve payment of the bills?
I'll move to approve the payment of bills in the amount of $8,727,729.64 as presented.
Thank you, Nick. Is there a second?
Second.
Teresa, any discussion? Roll call vote.
Feldman,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Holzhauser,
Hi.
Tyra,
Aye.
Yan,
Aye.
Bergeron.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. This concludes the action items portion of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn to closed session?
Do you need anything out of closed? Do you need anything out of closed?
Oh,
Okay. Let me make sure you got that squared. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, that's all right, and no one got to me before. I don't have anything of note. If someone wants to raise their paw, talk about something. Okay, so, we're back in open session because we never left. Could I have a motion to approve the Human Resources consent agenda?
I move to approve the human resources consent agenda as presented.
Andrew, is there a second?
I'll second.
Youssef, any discussion? Roll call vote?
Bergeron,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Hall,
Aye.
Olshauser,
Aye.
Tyra,
Aye.
Yam.
Okay, motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Youssef. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and the time is 7:07. Thank you.
Thinking about that, 150,000 for that Chromebooks.